Dean Martin sat in his car in the Cedars-Sinai parking garage for 45 minutes before he could make himself go inside. He'd driven there from his house in Beverly Hills, 20 minutes in LA traffic, then another 45 minutes sitting in the dim concrete garage, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. It was May 1990. Sammy Davis Jr. was dying. Throat cancer. Everyone knew it was the end. The tabloids had been running stories for weeks, photos of Sammy looking skeletal, weighing maybe 90 pounds, if that. The cancer had taken everything. His voice, his strength, his famous energy. Dean had been avoiding this visit for 2 weeks, not because he didn't care, because he cared too much, because he couldn't face another death, because 3 years after losing Dino, the thought of walking into another hospital room and saying goodbye to another person he loved felt impossible. But Sammy's wife Altavis had called that morning, her voice quiet, careful. "Dean, he's asking for you. He doesn't have long. Please." So Dean had gotten in his car, driven to Cedars-Sinai, and now he was sitting here, unable to make his legs move, unable to open the car door, unable to do the thing he knew he had to do. A security guard tapped on his window. "Sir, you okay?" Dean looked up. The guard recognized him immediately. Everyone always did. "Mr. Martin, you need help?" "I'm trying to visit a friend." "Okay, you know where you're going?" "Yeah, I know. But you can't go in." Dean nodded slowly. "If I go in there, it means he's really dying. If I stay here, maybe he's not." The guard was quiet for a moment. Young guy, couldn't have been more than 25, but he understood something about the moment. "Sir, if he's your friend, he needs you in there, not out here." "What if I can't handle it?" "Then you fall apart. But you do it where he can see you care." Dean looked at the guard. Then he opened the car door. The walk from the parking garage to Sammy's room was the longest walk of Dean's life. Each step felt like moving through water. Each corridor seemed to stretch forever. Nurses passed him, recognized him, said nothing. They knew where he was going and why. Room 8047, door slightly open. Dean stood outside for a long moment. He could hear the machines, the steady beep of monitors, the mechanical wheeze of oxygen, sounds that meant someone was still alive, but barely. He knocked softly. Altavis appeared at the door. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying for weeks, probably. Maybe months. "Dean, thank you for coming. How is he?" "He's awake. He's been waiting for you." She stepped aside. Dean walked in. The room was dim, curtains drawn, one small lamp providing just enough light to see, and in the bed, almost invisible under the white sheets, was what was left of Sammy Davis Jr. Dean had seen Sammy 2 months ago. Even then, the cancer had been obvious, the weight loss, the weakness. But this was different. This was a man at the absolute edge of existence, skin stretched over bone, eyes sunken, breathing labored even with the oxygen tube. But when Sammy saw Dean, he smiled. That smile, even dying, even with 80 pounds gone, even with his voice reduced to a whisper, Sammy smiled. "Dino." Dean walked to the bedside, sat in the chair that Altavis had probably been sitting in for days. "Hey, Sam, you came." "Of course I came." "I know you didn't want to." Dean's throat tightened. "Sam, it's okay. I understand. After Dino, after everything, I know this is hard for you." They sat in silence for a moment, the machines beeping, the oxygen hissing, the sounds of a life running out of time. Dean didn't know what to say. What do you say to a dying friend? What words make sense when someone is leaving and never coming back? So he did what he always did. He told stories. He told Sammy about a golf game he'd played last week, about Frank calling him at 2 in the morning to complain about some producer, about Deanna's kids and how they were growing up too fast. Small things, meaningless things. But Sammy listened. Or at least he seemed to. His eyes were open. That smile never quite left his face. After about 20 minutes, Sammy shifted slightly, winced. The pain was constant now. Dean knew. They had him on morphine, but it barely touched the worst of it. "Dean." "Yeah, Sam. I need to tell you something." "You don't need to tell me anything. Just rest." "No. I need to say this, while I still can." Dean leaned forward. Sammy's voice was so weak now, barely audible over the machines. You know what I'm going to tell them. Tell who, Sam? When I get up there, St. Peter, God, whoever runs the gate. Dean's eyes were burning, but he refused to cry. Not yet, not while Sammy could see. What are you going to tell them? Sammy took a shallow breath, gathered what little strength he had left. I'm going to tell them my friend walked away from $100,000 because they made me use the back door. Dean's hand was gripping the armrest of the chair, white-knuckled. That's how I know friendship is real. Sammy continued, his voice just a whisper now. That's my proof heaven exists, because you did that. Sam, that was nothing. That was everything. Sammy's eyes were wet now. Do you understand? That was everything to me. Dean couldn't hold it anymore. The tears came, silent at first, then his whole body shaking with sobs. He'd been holding back for 2 weeks, for 3 years, for a lifetime of not letting people see him break. Sammy reached out with one skeletal hand. Dean took it, held it gently because it felt like it might snap. Thank you, Sammy whispered. For what? For making me matter. Not despite the color of my skin, despite nothing, just making me matter. Dean was crying openly now. Nurses could probably hear him from the hallway. He didn't care. You always mattered, Sam. I know, but I didn't always believe it. Not until you showed me, that night at the dunes, walking away from all that money, telling them you wouldn't perform if I couldn't come through the front door like everyone else. That changed everything for me. Dean wiped his eyes with his free hand. You would have done the same for me. I don't know if I would have. I'd like to think so. But you actually did it. That's the difference. They sat there for a long time, Dean holding Sammy's hand, both of them crying, not talking, just being together in the terrible knowledge that this was goodbye. Finally, Sammy spoke again, so quiet Dean had to lean in close to hear. I'm not afraid of dying, Dean. You don't have to be brave for me, Sam. I'm not being brave. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not afraid. You know why? Why? Because everyone I love is already there. My mother, the people I lost, and soon Frank will be there too. You know Frank's not doing well. Dean nodded. Frank was declining. Not cancer, just age and wear, and the accumulated damage of living hard for 74 years. You'll be alone soon, Sammy said. Just you left. Don't talk like that. It's true, the Rat Pack. We're all dying, Dean. You're going to be the last one. Then I'll tell the stories. I'll make sure people remember. Sammy smiled. You're a terrible storyteller. You always get the details wrong. Despite everything, Dean laughed. It was true. Dean had never been good at remembering the specifics of stories. He'd tell the same story 3 different ways and get the dates wrong every time. Then you better stick around and correct me. I wish I could. The machines beeped, the oxygen hissed. Time was running out, and they both knew it. Dean, I need you to promise me something. Anything, Sam. When I'm gone, don't disappear. Don't do what you did after Dino. Don't lock yourself away and stop living. Sam, I'm serious. When Dino died, you died with him. I watched it happen. The light went out of you and it never came back. Don't let that happen again, please. I don't know if I can do this again. Lose someone else. You can, because you're stronger than you think, and because you have people who need you. Your kids, your grandkids, they need you to stick around. Dean was shaking his head. I'm so tired, Sam. I'm tired of saying goodbye. I know. But that's life. Life is just a series of hellos and goodbyes, and the goodbyes hurt. But they hurt because the hellos mattered. Sammy's breathing was getting more labored. The effort of talking was exhausting him. Altavis appeared in the doorway. Dean, maybe you should let him rest. Dean nodded, started to stand, but Sammy's hand tightened on his, one last squeeze. Dean, thank you for being my brother, not my friend. My brother. Dean leaned down, kissed Sammy's forehead. I love you, Sam. I love you too, Pally. Dean walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Sam, that night at the dunes, I didn't walk away because I was noble or brave. I walked away because I couldn't stand there and let them treat you like that. Because it made me sick. Because you're my friend, and friends don't let friends get humiliated. Sammy's smile was radiant, despite the ravaged body. I know, that's why it mattered. Dean left the room, made it about 10 feet down the hallway before he had to stop and lean against the wall. He stood there crying while nurses and visitors walked past, pretending not to notice Dean Martin falling apart in a hospital corridor. Altavice found him there 20 minutes later. He's sleeping now, she said gently. You should go home, get some rest. How long does he have? Days, maybe a week. Will you call me? Of course. Dean drove home in a daze, poured himself a drink, sat in his living room staring at nothing. The phone rang 3 days later. May 16, 1990. Dean knew before he answered. You always know. Dean, it's Altavice. Sammy passed about an hour ago, peacefully, in his sleep. Dean thanked her, hung up, and sat in his chair as the sun came up over Los Angeles. The funeral was massive, thousands of people, every major entertainer in Hollywood. The service was at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Frank was there, looking frail. Liza Minnelli spoke, Shirley MacLaine spoke, Jesse Jackson spoke, and Dean Martin stood at the podium, looking older than anyone had ever seen him, and told the truth about his friend. Sammy and I came from different worlds, Dean said, his voice steady but quiet. He was black, I was white. He was Protestant, I was Catholic. He was from Harlem, I was from Ohio, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that we chose each other. We chose to be family. He paused, gathered himself. 3 days before Sammy died, I sat with him in his hospital room, and he told me something I'll never forget. He said that when he got to heaven, he was going to tell God about the time I walked away from $100,000 because a casino made him use the service entrance, and that would be his proof that friendship is real. Dean's voice cracked slightly, but Sammy had it backwards. He was my proof. He was my proof that love is stronger than money, that dignity matters more than success, that standing up for what's right matters more than staying comfortable. He looked out at the crowd, thousands of faces, all of them watching him say goodbye to his brother. People ask me what Sammy meant to me, and the answer is simple. Sammy taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about standing together when the world tries to tear you apart. It's about saying, you humiliate him, you humiliate me, and meaning it. Dean stepped back from the podium, then returned for one last thing. I'll miss you every day, Sam, but I'll keep my promise. I won't disappear. I'll stick around for my kids, for my grandkids, for the people who need me to be here, because that's what you asked me to do, and I've never broken a promise to you yet. He walked back to his seat. Frank reached over and squeezed his hand. 2 old men who'd lost their third, the Rat Pack down to 2. Dean kept his promise to Sammy. He didn't disappear. He didn't lock himself away. He spent time with his family. He did a few performances. He showed up for the people who mattered. But he never fully recovered from that hospital room visit, from holding Sammy's hand while Sammy thanked him for making him matter, from hearing his friend say that their friendship was proof heaven exists. 5 years later, on Christmas Day 1995, Dean Martin died in his home. He was 78 years old. The official cause was acute respiratory failure, but everyone who knew him understood the truth. Dean Martin had been dying since March 1987, when Dino's plane hit that mountain. Sammy's death in 1990 had taken another piece. Frank's death in 1998 would have taken the rest, but Dean didn't live to see it. At Dean's funeral, his daughter Diana told a story about how her father had come home from visiting Sammy that day in May 1990, how he'd sat her down and told her what Sammy had said, about friendship being proof of heaven, about making someone matter. My father cried when he told me, Diana said. He said, I spent my whole life pretending nothing bothered me, but Sammy bothered me. Losing him bothered me, and I'm glad it did, because that's how I know it was real. The story of Dean's hospital visit became legendary among the people who'd known both men. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. 2 friends saying goodbye. No cameras, no performance, just love and gratitude and the terrible knowledge that time was running out. Sammy had been right. Their friendship was proof heaven exists, not because of what they accomplished together, but because of what they were willing to sacrifice for each other. Dean walking away from money and career opportunities because they humiliated Sammy. Sammy releasing Dean from obligations when he knew Dean was drowning in grief. That's what brotherhood looks like. Not grand gestures, just consistent, repeated choices to value the other person's dignity over your own comfort. Years after both men died, a journalist found the young reporter who'd been at the Dunes Hotel that night in 1959 when Dean had walked away from his contract. The reporter was old now, retired, but he remembered every detail. "I've covered entertainment for 40 years, the old reporter said. "I've seen everything, but I've never seen anything like what Dean Martin did that night, and I've never seen a friendship like what he had with Sammy Davis Jr., because it cost them something. Real friendship always does. That's the legacy, not the performances or the hit records or the movies. The legacy is a man sitting in a hospital room holding his dying friend's hand and crying because his friend is thanking him for making him matter. The legacy is keeping a promise even when it's hard, even when you want to disappear, even when grief makes everything feel impossible. The legacy is choosing to love people even though you know you'll have to say goodbye. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. taught us that, not through speeches or grand pronouncements, but through the quiet, consistent choice to be there for each other, even at the end, especially at the end.